Judy, what do you think about this museum and interviewing those people you get to talk with?
Oh, it's incredible. There's so much to learn here and so much to see. It's really a treasure here in Nevada County.
It is.
I was so happy to be involved with it, and I may be involved a little bit more later on.
Yeah, well, I'm also involved with the museum here. I didn't want to tell anybody that, but yeah, it's great fun. We have a good time, and these guys do a lot of really good work for nothing at all. And it's amazing that...
You mean volunteers don't get paid?
Well, they do, but it's not in money.
Okay.
It's just in personal satisfaction, which is a good thing.
So what are we on to next?
Well, we're going to be going for a Railbus ride.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And I was going to say that it's interesting that all of these people from different walks of life came together at this railroad museum, and except all but 3 of us at the museum have any real railroading experience. So it's amazing what skills can be done to make a railroad work from people who never ran a railroad. And the Railbus is a good example of that, because the people that run the Railbus never ran a train. And
how long is the Railbus ride, John?
the Railbus ride, Trudy, is about a half-hour round trip.
Oh, fun.
We go around the hill down into what used to be a really nice meadow, and we go over near the Northern Queen Hotel and then come back up the hill.
Yeah.
And the bus stops in a couple of places along the way, and information is imparted about things historical, things hysterical, and things questionable.
Okay, make sure you make reservations, because they really, and how many people does the Railbus hold?
The Railbus, depending on the girth, will hold anywhere from 20 to about 26 people. If there's a lot of kids, maybe even more.
Okay.
And by the way, the Railbus is dog-friendly.
What about cats?
We haven't had anybody bring their pet cat to the museum yet, but I would imagine as long as the dogs get along with the cat, it would be okay too.
No giraffes or elephants, though.
Elephants?
Okay.
Well, the elephant will be pulling the bus back up the hill.
Okay. Well, make sure you make those reservations, because the space is limited. So call the Railroad Museum and get on the books for your... And how long is it? It's going to be closed pretty soon, isn't it?
Yeah, the end of October is the last one, and it doesn't begin again until May.
Oh, okay. So if you don't get in this year, next year is there, but this year would be fun.
Yeah.
What about the colors? Are there any change of colors in the area up there at this time of year,
Well,
John?
down in the meadow, there are several non-native trees, and they all will change their colors. I don't remember the names of the trees, but it's the kind of tree that goes through a color shift between green, yellow, orange, red, and then brown. And at certain times, you can see one tree with all of those colors all at once in the same tree. It's really very pretty.
I remember our 6 grandsons, they always wanted to blow the whistle on the train. Is there a whistle on this Railbus train?
There is no whistle. There is a push-button horn and a ring-a-ding bell like the trolleys used to have.
Oh, okay. It'll be fun, so hope to see you there.
Yeah, and we're going to take a Railbus ride and enjoy the trip. And here we go.
Okay, bye.
All clear, all aboard.
Hi folks, John Weeks here again. This Railbus operation is a coordinated effort by our museum, the in-town campground, and the Northern Queen Hotel. And as we head down the hill here, you can see various pieces of equipment that we've restored. Ahead of us is the restoration barn, where the actual restoration of the cars occurs. Inside currently is a Denver Rio Grande narrow gauge cattle car being restored. And further down the hill you can see another barn behind the big one. That's a newer one, and inside there is a coach waiting to go into the big house to get restored. And ahead a 15-mile-an-hour sign, which is there for cosmetic purposes, because we never go faster than about 4 miles an hour. And beyond that are various flat cars that have already been restored. One of them has lumber logs on it, which was typical for lumber railroads when they were being used in that fashion. We have wheels over there waiting to get cars built on top of them. A yard limit sign, which is that white V sign you see ahead, marks the boundary between the museum property and the in-town campground property. As we head down the hill, it becomes prettier and prettier, and it's hard to imagine that in this scene here we're actually in the middle of Nevada City. On this bus trip here, it's just going to be for your enticement. We actually do a lot of other things that we're not going to cover here today because we want you to actually come down and ride the bus. And we're going to have our lead docent, Jim Fessler, do a little example of one of our presentations coming up shortly. And I think you'll find it quite interesting. As I was saying, we are actually only about a half a mile from downtown Nevada City here. One would think we were up in the high mountains. It's a very scenic place here. And we're going to stop here, and Jim's going to momentarily get out, and he's going to give you an example of one of our presentations.
You all know what a mine shaft is. It's a hole in the ground. Well, technically, a shaft is only a vertical hole in the ground. If you go sideways, horizontally in the ground, it's called either a drift or an adit. Lo and behold, we have the northern drift. Now, the first time we brought the Railbus down here, we had just refurbished the bus. We didn't know how good the brakes were. We didn't know how good the track was. It was just refurbished. And we thought it might not be a good idea to load the bus with guests and tourists. Coming down the curve, you get a little too fast, bus rolls over through the outhouses into the stream. It would probably make headlines in the local newspaper that we don't want. So we loaded that first bus with our museum executives. Brought it down here and stopped. Our treasurer took one look at the drift. And he said, oh my gosh, our checkbook is getting thin, donations haven't been what they are, this rail bus cost us a lot of money. Maybe there's some residual gold in the mine. We ought to check that out a little more seriously. Then our curator took a look at it, and he said, from a historic standpoint, we ought to find out who dug the mine, how deep does it go, how much gold did they get out of it, what's the history behind that mine. So a couple days later, they contacted a couple of mining experts and brought them down here to inspect the mine. And as they approached the mine, the inspectors said to our officers, what did you bring me along for? Take a look at it. It's missing something. Look at the door. There are no hinges. There's no door handle. What's more, the track goes right through. You couldn't open that door if you tried. It's a fake, an absolute fake. It was put here in about 1985 by the Northern Queen Inn to enhance the ambiance, the Western ambiance of their 2-foot gauge train ride that they used to have around here and around the Chinese cemetery up in the middle of the campground.
Okay, folks, that was his presentation at the Northern Drift Mine. Of course, normally on the tour, he would be standing on the side of the bus, not on the ground. We did that on the ground just for your entertainment. And it's a pretty ride. I think I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit and let you enjoy the ride. Up ahead, folks, you can see on the left-hand side of the track a flashing red light. And the reason that flashing red light is there is to remind us that the track ends just around the corner up ahead. So we need to be vigilant in that respect. Fortunately for us, the switch we're going over right now, we're going to stop once we clear so we can go back in the other direction. And here we go. This is a reverse move. It's normally in railroad parlance called a switchback maneuver, and we are traveling forward in the reverse direction. We're entering the meadow. We are on the Northern Queen grounds, and the meadow was originally manicured and planted with various bushes and raised flower beds. It had in non-native trees brought in. There was statuary, there were fountains, there were ponds and pathways and gazebos. It was a very pretty manicured place. Unfortunately, subsequent owners had different ideas on what to do, and the meadow has lapsed back into its natural California version. And we hope someday to have it actually back to the condition that it was originally. Here we have the meadow. You can see the non-native trees, and they're changing their colors. Those trees actually at certain points in their turning will have all the different colors, ranging from green to yellow to orange to red to dark purple, and then of course brown. You can see that the meadow was, in its heyday, quite a nice place to be. We see the bus coming back on its reverse move, about to complete its switchback maneuver. We utilize the switchback maneuver and also the loop at the Northern Queen mine to ensure that the rail bus will travel back uphill in the forward direction. Here, the track you see on the left, that's a weed sprayer that we had there. That track was where the original restoration occurred for the cars and equipment before we had the restoration barn built up at the museum up the hill. Heading off towards the Northern Queen Hotel right now. This is part of the trip that I like the most. It's kind of like a highway through the trees. And we would talk about on the right-hand side, there is a street, Railroad Avenue, which was actually the original Northern Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad right-of-way, portion of it anyway, ending at the Nevada City Station down at Sacramento Street. See on the left the meadow. We're about to enter into a woody area, and we are almost at the Northern Queen Hotel parking lot. Now approaching what we call the Northern Queen Loop. It's or in railroad parlance, a balloon track, and basically it's just a circle coming back to itself. And originally this track was a 2-foot gauge narrow railroad. It was a 2-foot gauge narrow gauge railroad. Our bus was 3-foot gauge. Our equipment's all 3-foot gauge, so we had to take the outside rail and move it out 1 foot. Because the radius of the turn is still for a 2-foot gauge, as we go around these tight curves, causes a lot of squealing and vibration from the wheels hard up against the rails. Here we see the rail bus departing the Northern Queen Hotel Station and Loop. There is a trestle here. It's going over the Gold Run Creek. The bus on its trip actually passes over this creek 6 times. We are now halfway through our journey and on the return trip back to the museum proper. Again, we're traveling through the nice shady part that I like so much. As the bus rolls along, you can see there's little curves in the tracks. The narrow gauge railroads back in the day were small enough so that they could actually maneuver the rails between and around rocks and trees without having to cut down or blast away a lot of things. So the narrow gauge railroads were usually very twisty and turny. Very rarely were there any lengthy straight sections of track. Again, this is the pretty part, and I'm just gonna let you folks enjoy the ride. Here we come back into the meadow. To the right is the track that we will back down to get to the other side of the menu so we can go back up the hill. This will be the second switchback maneuver. That section of track to the right is the only section of track where the rail bus travels in reverse in both directions. The track you see ahead of us continues around to the right and actually connects to the track that we used to come down the hill. And off we go into our second switchback maneuver on our way back to the museum. Well, a little bit about the bus, folks. It came from Tuolumne, the West Side Lumber Company. A gentleman by the name of Glenn Bell purchased the equipment from the lumbering company when it closed up its doors and went out of business. He was going to run himself a tourist railroad that didn't work out too well because it was in the 70s and we were in a recession. So he needed to have a rail bus so that he could still run an operation and not have the huger cost of running a big train. So he found a 1917 rail inspection car and a 1930s bus and Ford truck parts and put together this rail bus. And he used it for a while, and his business eventually closed because the recession kept people from traveling to where he was doing his operation. The rail bus wound up here under the ownership of the Northern Queen owners, and when they stopped running their railroad, we managed to acquire this bus and one other rail bus that they had. That one being the Sarah Kidder, which is used only on days of heavy traffic. This bus that we're riding in is the Donna Jean. It's named Donna Jean after our current director's wife because he had built a caboose in his front yard, and in order to assuage his wife in not throwing him out and making him live in the caboose, he decided that he would name this bus after her. And I have to say she's quite delighted over having something named after her. And our director is quite happy because he's still living in the house and not in the caboose. On the left, you can see the brakeman is lining the switch again so that we can go back up the hill, which is the straight track. On the right, you can see a little bit of a track that comes down to the track we're on. That's our delivery and debarkation track for equipment coming in or equipment being shipped out to other places. Big flatbed trucks can come down on a dirt road and access the track up in the flat area to the right. As we come up the hill, shortly after we get to the top and go down a little sag there, we're going to stop, and again our lead docent Jim Fessler is going to give us another example of some of the presentations that we do. Here he's going to talk about flat rocks over on the side of the right-of-way that the Indians used.
Well, if you look behind me at this point, you'll see a couple of very large rocks between the tall ponderosa pine trees. Look closely at those rocks, and there are 9 holes in the rocks, some of them as much as 6 inches deep. They're Indian grinding rocks. Back in the day, the Nisenan Indian tribe would grind their acorns there. Acorns are their primary food source, and there were a plentiful supply of live oak trees in the valley here to keep them supplied. The tall pine trees would give them protection from the heat of the hot summer sun. There are a number of cedar trees around. They would cover their teepees with the bark from the cedar trees. The open forest would provide for them small game to enhance the protein end of their diets. Perhaps some squirrels, some rabbits, quail, turkeys, a number, maybe even some deer if they're lucky. The stream provided the water they needed. And perhaps fish to get a little variety to their diet.
Okay folks, what do you think so far? We're on the homeward stretch here. You obviously didn't see everything that we do on this tour, and we did that purposely so you can come back and take the full tour and get the full experience. It's a great place to be. We enjoy it. We're all volunteers. This is the best thing in Nevada County. Like we said before, it's the biggest little museum in Nevada County. Now, there's a lot more to see, not only in the museum, but of course here on the Railbus tour. We'd also like to invite you back. We're open all year, all over. We have summer and winter hours. In the winter, it's just weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. The Railbus does not run except on occasions when we have special requests. Then it might run, but not on a regular schedule. During the months of May through October, we have our summer months. We're open Friday through Tuesday. The Railbus runs 6 round trips every Saturday during that period of time, starting at 9:40 in the morning and the last trip at 2:40 p.m. And it's free. The museum's free. We're volunteers. The museum relies on donations, just like a lot of other places. And we hope that you'll come and enjoy the show. And if you feel inclined to, leave us a donation so we can continue this wonderful, beautiful setting and example of old days kind of railroading for you. And at this point, I'm just going to let you watch and listen for a minute. Here, we're almost at the end. We're going to be putting the bus away. And remember, the museum entry is free, the bus ride is free. Come on down. The weather is always fine because it never rains in California. Here we see the bus coming into the station, loaded with happy customers, about to get off and go in, and there you see a docent ready and waiting to give them a tour. And Good night, ladies. Good night, ladies. We're putting the bus away. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please come back. And here we say goodbye, but we'll be seeing you soon.